Hi there, I'm Trevor and welcome to TH Training Painting. This is another one of my Battlefield Basics videos, and in this video we're going to look at how to make these lovely looking fences for your tabletop. These are suitable for lots and lots of different games and they're super easy to make. So I'll grab my tools, grab myself a cup of tea and let's get to work. The tools and materials I'm going to be using are wooden coffee stirrers, craft matchsticks, some craft sticks, a ruler, pencil, a pair of side cutters, small file, a pin vise with a drill bit, some super glue, closed pegs, PVA glue, sand and small stones, flock, and of course some paint and paint brushes. To make the fences, I'll be using these craft sticks as the base. These sticks are slightly larger than a regular ice pop stick. The sticks I have are roughly 18mm wide and 150mm long, which is about 2/3 of an inch by 6 inches, which is the perfect size for the bases. To create the fence posts that I'll attach to the base, I'm going to use these craft matchsticks, and they're roughly about 50mm long or about 2 inches in length, and I'll just be cutting these in half to create my posts. That means that each matchstick will give me 2 posts. And then for the planking on the fence, I'm going to use some wooden coffee stirrers. First, I just want to make sure that the stirrer is long enough to be used, making sure that it's longer than my base. This means that I'll just cut the stirrer down to length of about 150mm to match the base. And the basic construction of the fence is like this. The posts made from the matchsticks are attached to the base. Then I'll attach 2 coffee stirrers to the posts to create the fence. You may notice that this coffee stirrer is a little warped, and that is perfectly fine as it'll help make the fence look a little bit more rustic. To start, I'll take the matchsticks that are to be attached to the base to create the fence posts and cut them to my desired length. Grabbing my ruler and a pencil, I'm going to make a mark at 25mm on the matchstick, which for my matchstick is half the length of it. But when making your own fence, you can cut the length to suit yourself. You do need to make sure that the post is tall enough to hold the 2 coffee stirrers. I'm making my fencing for 28mm games. When making your own fence, a height between maybe 20 and 30mm works best for these types of low fences. With them marked, I could use a craft knife to cut them, but an easier way to cut them is to use some side cutters or sprue cutters. Line up the cutters with the mark I made on the matchstick and simply snip them in half. Remember to take care whilst using sharp tools. You can find inexpensive cutters online. Once cut, I can clean away any rough areas with a small file. Here's what the fence will look like with the matchsticks cut to my required length. The next thing to cut is the coffee stirrers to create my fence planks. Getting my ruler and pencil again, I'm going to make a mark at 0, another at 150mm, which is the length of the base. And just like the matchsticks, I'll use my side cutters to trim the stirrers to the required length. I'll also make sure to remove any of the rounded edges of the stirrers as I do not want them on my model. With the planks cut, I can take a craft knife and roughen the edges of the planks, or even add some nicks into the wood and maybe roughen the ends of the planks. But I'm not going to do that for this video. I'm just wanting to show you how easy it is to make some low wooden fences. Time to add the posts to the base. I could just glue the posts onto the base, but this could be tricky and the posts may fall over whilst the glue is drying. An easy solution is to drill some small holes into the base so that the post can be inserted into it. For this, I'm going to mark the area where I wish to drill the holes. With my ruler and a pencil, I'm going to mark the centre of the width of the base and then rule a line along the length of the base. I could do some maths and work out equally spaced points for me to drill out. For a quicker solution, I'll just make a mark 5mm from either side of the base and another mark in the centre at 75mm. I could just make the fence with 3 posts, which is fine, but I want to have 5 posts, so I'll just mark the middle between the center mark and the mark at the edge of the base. There I go, and hopefully you can see the 5 marks I've made to act as guides for drilling the post holes. The tool I'm going to use for the drilling of the holes is a pin vise with a suitably sized drill bit. The drill bit is roughly the same thickness as the matchsticks. With the pin vise, I'll line it up with one of the marks on my base and start to drill into the wood by applying some pressure onto it whilst turning the pin vise. Also, make sure to protect your work surface as I do not want to make any holes in it. That's the first hole done. I'll use my file to clean up the area around the hole in the base. Just to show you how this works, I'll take one of my posts, I'll push it into the hole, and there you go. That's how the post fits into the base. Although I will be gluing these into the base once I have all the holes drilled. Instead of using a pin vise, you can use a power rotary tool if you have access to one. That's all the holes drilled, time to attach the posts to the bases. I could use PVA glue for this, however that can take some time to dry, so I'm going to use super glue instead, as it will give me a faster bond. I'm using super glue with a brush applicator as it makes this a lot easier to do. Taking a post, I'll add some glue to the edges, push it into the hole of the base, making sure to set it square with the planks for later on in the project. Then I'll do the same for the other posts in the base. That's all the posts glued into the base. If any of them protrude from the bottom of the base, I can easily sand them smooth with my file. I'll just continue gluing the rest of the posts into these bases. Here are the posts attached to the base. Now I can add the planks to the posts. I'll be adding 2 planks to the post, one near the bottom and the other near the top. I'll attach them by adding dabs of glue onto the post and then gently pressing the planks onto the area where the posts have the glue. Again, I'll be using super glue. I'll add a dab of glue here near the bottom of all the posts and grab a plank. Then gently press it onto the post, making sure it is straight. For the second plank, I'll add a dab of glue near the top of each of the posts. Then, taking the plank, press it into place. So, that's all the planks into place. Ah, no, that one's just moved. As you saw, I was having some trouble with gluing the planks onto the post, but thankfully I have an easy fix for this. And it is to use some clothes pegs to hold the plank onto the post whilst the glue dries. As before, I'll add some dabs of super glue to the posts. I'll lay the plank onto the post. Use a clothes pegs as a clamp to hold it into place, and I also use pegs on all the posts to make sure the planks adhere securely. I'll leave that to dry and get working on adding planks to these too. Here are my fences so far, and they are looking good. I could just paint them and the base brown and they'd look fine, but I'll be adding some texture to the base and that will make the models look a lot better. I will use some kiln dried sand for the texture, plus I'll add some small stones, and all this is attached to the base with some PVA glue. Taking a paintbrush, I'll brush the glue onto the top of the base. Remember to use an inexpensive paintbrush for this. Don't go using your best miniature painting brushes. Decent, inexpensive brushes that can be used for terrain building can be found in most discount stores. With the glue in the base, I'm going to grab some small stones and put it on the base, and another one here. The small stones are optional, so you can have as many or as little as you want. Then I'll add some sand to the rest of the base. I'm using some kiln dried sand, which you can buy at most DIY stores. I'm using a little scoop here to help me pour the sand over the areas which have glue on them. With the sand added, I'll gently tap off the excess. Just noticed an area I've missed, so I'll carefully add some more glue to the base and then add a little more sand. Now I'll leave this to dry and get on with adding texture to these other 2 fences. Here's all my bases textured, which I'll just leave to dry. That's the PVA glue and the base is now dry, and now I can start painting the bases. With some paper down to protect my work surface, the first bits I'm going to paint are the stones which I added earlier. I'll add a base coat of some mid-grey acrylic paint to the stones, which later on I'll dry brush with some lighter colours. That's all the grey paint added. I'll paint the rest of these bases and make sure the paint is dry before moving on to the next stage. With the grey paint dry, I'll paint the rest of the base. For that, I'm going to use some burnt umber acrylic paint which I have in my palette, and I'll paint this onto the base. I'm adding some of the paint onto the stones as well to create some dirt effects. Also making sure to paint the edges of the base as well. That's the first one done, now I'll paint the others. With the brown paint dry, it's time to start dry brushing the bases. If you've never done any dry brushing before, please check out my tutorial video here. The first part to get dry brushed is the stones, and for that I'll use 2 lighter shades of grey. With some paint in my palette, I'll start with the darker shade of grey and heavily dry brush the stones. Then, using a lighter shade of grey, I'll gently dry brush the stones to highlight their edges. With the stones now dry brushed, I can finish painting the rest of the base. I'll start by painting some yellow ochre onto the base, followed by some buff titanium. With the paint in my palette, I'll start with the yellow ochre onto the base. With that dry brushing done, I'll now lightly dry brush the buff titanium onto the base. That's the base all dry brushed. I'll just finish painting these bases before moving on to painting the fences. With the paint on the bases dry, I can now start painting the fences. For my base coat, I'm going to use some raw umber acrylic paint. I have some paint already in my palette which I thinned down with some water, and now I'll carefully start painting the fence. Depending on how thin the paint is, I may have to apply 2 coats. That's the base coat of raw umber added. I'll leave it to dry and decide if it needs a second coat of paint. In the meantime, I'll finish off painting these fences. Here are the fences with their base coat of raw umber, which I did give them a second coat of paint. Now I'm going to just lightly dry brush the fences with some buff titanium just to highlight the edges of the planks and posts. That's all the painting completed and the fences are looking great. I could start using them right now, but I want to add some flock on the bases to represent grass. And for that, I'm going to add some mid-green fine turf flock. With the flock in a container, I'll grab my PVA glue and a paintbrush, then paint the glue onto the base into the areas where I want the flock to stick to. When making your own fences, you can decide how much glue to add depending on how much or how little flock you want on your bases. So you can have the base completely covered in grass, or you can have it very patchy with just a few clumps here and there. It's entirely up to you. That's the glue added. I'll set the model into the container and use my finger to brush the flock onto the glue. Once I have all the glue covered, I'll shake off the excess flock back into the container. And there I go, the base is now flocked. I'll leave it to dry while I have flock to the other bases. That's my fences completed, and they are looking great and will look even better on the tabletop. When making your own fences, you can add some personal touches. For example, I made this fence here with a broken section. I made this by just using my side cutters to cut one of the planks, roughen up the ends a bit, and then glue it into the post at an unusual angle. And this piece is a hedge and fence combination, allowing me to use my fences with my hedges if I wanted to. You can view a tutorial on how to make the hedges right here. I really hope you enjoyed this video and have learned how to make your own fences for your tabletop games. Here's a gallery of some of the completed fences. It'd be great if you give this video a like or a share, and remember to subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Also, check out my website at thtrain.com where you can see more of my work. You can contact me through the comment section below or through my social media links in the description. And again, thanks for watching.